The New York Giants finished the 2024 season with a 3-14 record and missed the playoffs for the 7th time in the last 8 years. It was a long year for the Giants as they lost in Week 1 at home by more than 20 points, then lost to the Commanders in Week 2 by a score of 21-18 in which Washington had 7 field goals, and you get the point. They eventually battled back to 2-3 as they surprised everyone with a 29-20 road win over the Seahawks, then lost 10 in a row to fall to 2-13. There was a point where everyone thought Cam Ward was going to be a New York Giant, but the Giants beat the Colts in Week 17 to push them a few spots down the board in the 2025 draft. They made a controversial decision to keep both head coach Brian Daboll and GM Joe Schoen, as this team has a combined record of just 9-25 over the last 2 years. They've went through countless ups and downs over the past couple of years and are in a pretty difficult position moving forward. As if it's not enough to play in New York and to deal with the media and pressure of playing in this market, the NFC East is a very loaded division. The Eagles just won the Super Bowl, the Commanders just went to the NFC Championship game, and the Cowboys are not a bad team either, and this all presents a very difficult situation for the Giants to succeed in. But how will they do in 2025? Well, we're going to break everything down in today's video, and if you could like the video before we start, I would really appreciate it, and without further ado, let's begin. And we are starting today's video by discussing what the New York Giants did this offseason in free agency, both in terms of players they brought in and players they lost. The Giants spent nearly $90 million on 2 big free agents in corner Paulson Adebo and safety Javon Holland. And when you think of the 2024 New York Giants, you probably think of Malik Nabers on a very bad team, or even fellow rookie Tyrone Tracy making plays out of the backfield too. But the 2024 Giants offense wasn't the only bad part of the team. The defense wasn't great either, though the defense was definitely set up to fail at times by the offense. This was a unit that finished 29th in DVOA and was 31st in defensive passing DVOA, and when you allow 26 or more points in 9 games in 2024 the way the Giants did, well, you're going to lose a lot of those games, and for reference, they were just 1-8 in those 9 games, with the lone win coming over the Colts near the end of the year. Now, if you look at the raw defensive statistics for the Giants' passing defense, they were actually 8th in passing yards allowed and 9th in passing touchdowns allowed, but there were several games where they were down early to the point where opposing teams simply stopped throwing the football, and for reference, they had 5 losses of 20 or more points. The corners who played the most last year were Deonte Banks, Cordell Flott, and Drew Phillips, the rookie from Kentucky. And outside of Drew Phillips, who is a really good young slot corner, there was a lot to be desired for. And the biggest thing with the Giants this offseason was they needed to upgrade the roster. The Giants' goal this offseason was not to go from a 3-win team to winning the NFC East, at least it shouldn't have been, because this team is miles away from winning 12 games and legitimately competing for a chance to go to the Super Bowl. And they upgraded the roster significantly from where they were entering the 2024 season by bringing in Adebo and Holland. Paulson Adebo's 2024 season was unfortunately cut short due to an injury he sustained in a Thursday night game in which he broke his femur against the Broncos. And I think if there is any positivity to take away from this, in terms of the player Paulson Adebo can be for the New York Giants, this was a broken femur, meaning it wasn't a torn Achilles or any soft tissue injury where you worry if the player will have the same explosiveness. This was a straightforward broken bone, meaning I think Paulson Adebo will be good to go for 2025 and should be an upgrade for a secondary that needs it. And with any team in this division, I'm never going to dismiss or scoff at the idea of a team upgrading their secondary, which the Giants most definitely did. And like we've mentioned before on the channel, NFL teams are a lot smarter about contracts they give out in free agency now versus 15 to 20 years ago, and the reality of both the Adebo and Holland contracts is the Giants can get out of those deals in 2 years if either guy does not pan out. They also brought in Chauncey Golston, veteran defensive lineman Roy Robertson Harris, and former Steelers quarterback Russell Wilson, who will certainly be discussed at length later in the video. They lost safety Jason Pinnock to the 49ers, and Pinnock himself wasn't a great player or tremendous loss, but he played the most snaps out of any player on the 2024 Giants defense, and that is certainly worth noting as we enter 2025. But the big free agent signings for this team were, of course, the 2 guys in the secondary in Paulson Adebo and Javon Holland, and of course, a former Super Bowl champion quarterback in Russell Wilson. Where this team's strengths are entering the 2025 season is clear, and that's along the defensive line. I'm sure there are some Giants fans that wish they would have lost to the Colts in Week 17 so that they could have finished with a 2-15 record and drafted Miami quarterback Cam Ward, but as we know, that didn't happen and they selected Penn State pass rusher Abdul Carter, number 3 overall. Having Abdul Carter, Brian Burns, and Dexter Lawrence all get after the quarterback is a nightmare for opposing offensive lines, and even 2022 number 5 overall pick, Kayvon Thibodeaux too. I also really like their third-round selection in Toledo defensive tackle Darius Alexander, and we'll discuss him more shortly, but getting after the quarterback is where this team is going to thrive this year. It was unfortunate for the Giants that Dexter Lawrence only played 12 games last year, but he has undoubtedly been one of the best, not just defensive linemen, but one of the best players in the NFL over the past few years. And this may be a hot take, but I don't think it should be, but Dexter Lawrence has played at a Hall of Fame level over the past few years, but unfortunately does not have a first-team All-Pro due to playing in the same era as guys like Aaron Donald, Chris Jones, Quinnen Williams, and several others too. This is a loaded defensive tackle era, but the point is, if Sexy Dexy, Brian Burns, and Abdul Carter all play 17 games, this is going to be a very tough team to score on this year. Bobby Okereke also kind of gets forgotten at times at linebacker, but he too has played at a really high level over the past few years, and I expect that to continue in 2025 too. One thing that either gets forgotten about or just not discussed because the Giants were not a good team last year was how much time guys missed with injury defensively. Dexter Lawrence, Okereke, Kayvon Thibodeaux, and Tyler Nubin all missed 4 or more games, and that's inevitably going to hurt your team over the course of a 17-game season. I know GM Joe Schoen has received a lot of criticism throughout his tenure, but I really like this defense heading into 2025. As simple as this idea is, if the Giants can play more complementary football this year than they did last, then they should improve to a 6-11 or 7-10 team, really by default, because this defense is certainly one of the better defenses in the NFL heading into 2025. No team is perfect, and I do have some concerns at corner, specifically the depth at corner, but this team doesn't just have good pass rushers, they have depth at pass rush too. Having Chauncey Golston and Kayvon Thibodeaux in DPR roles, which stands for designated pass rusher roles for those who may not know, is kind of a flex heading into the season because your starters are Brian Burns and Abdul Carter, and if the big guy in the middle plays all 17 games in Dexter Lawrence, then he makes everyone's job easier because of how much attention he commands. Dexter is the definition of a problem for opposing offensive linemen, and the way to block him should start with 2 opposing offensive linemen every play. Period. And with these guys getting after the quarterback, there's going to be hurried throws, quarterback hits, sacks, and everything that should help a defense go from finishing 28th in turnovers, which is where they finished last year, to significantly higher in 2025. This team at times was hard to watch last year, but if they can stay relatively healthy this year, then there's going to be a few games, plural a few, that they're going to win in large part to the defense. This defense only intercepted 5 passes in all of 2024, and with the upgrades they made this offseason defensively, I'd be shocked if the defense doesn't take not just a little step, but a monumental step forward this year. For the 2025 Giants rookie impact, I think this team will have significantly more rookie impact than other NFL teams, and I do think the defensive rookie of the year is on this roster. It's third-round pick Darius Alexander, and all jokes aside, I do think Abdul Carter will win the defensive rookie of the year for a couple of reasons. Now, as we've mentioned 1,000 times in the channel before, very rarely is one specific thing true where it's just strictly one guy doing the best at his job, and it's just because of him and that nothing else mattered. I think it's going to be a clear case of Abdul Carter being a great player while also being in a great situation, getting to play on the same defensive front as Dexter Lawrence and Brian Burns. And to be completely honest, if Abdul Carter stays healthy and plays all 17 games, guys, I'll be honest, I would be surprised if he finishes the year with less than 45 pressures and really anywhere less than 7 or 8 sacks. He is a freak athletically, and I think he compares very favorably to, ironically, another former Penn State pass rusher in Micah Parsons. Now, Micah has gained gained weight since entering the NFL, and there's a big difference between where his body is now in 2025 versus when he entered the league back in 2021. But when you watched Micah in his rookie season, he was a clear difference maker, and he was a top 5 finish in the Defensive Player of the Year voting, not just Defensive Rookie of the Year voting. I think that's the type of impact that we can have from Abdul Carter in year 1. And if I had to be really bold for Abdul Carter this year, I really wouldn't put it past him to have a 50 to 55 pressure season along with double-digit sacks. And as we know, the Defensive Rookie of the Year award, and Defensive Player of the Year award for that matter too, more often than not is a sack-based award. So if Abdul Carter comes in and has anywhere from 8+ sacks, which I definitely think is reasonable, well, I'd be pretty surprised if he doesn't win Defensive Rookie of the Year. Abdul Carter is a freak athletically, he's a very good football player, and he's in a very good situation, and he made the transition from off-ball linebacker to full-time pass rusher from 2023 to 2024, and he was also playing with really one shoulder during the Notre Dame playoff game, and he took over the second half and looked like a future franchise pass rusher. And when you factor all of these things in, especially getting to play alongside Sexy Dexy and Brian Burns, well, I do think Abdul Carter will win Defensive Rookie of the Year. Now, for the Giants' other first-round pick, an Ole Miss quarterback Jackson Dart. Well, the last time the Giants had a quarterback on their roster from Ole Miss that was also selected in the first round, that player ended up winning 2 Super Bowls. Now, for Jackson Dart specifically, this is a very interesting discussion because his offense at Ole Miss certainly was not a pro-style offense, not even close, and there's going to have to be a transition period for him to go from that college offense to where Brian Daboll has his offense with the Giants, and there's also going to be a period where Russell Wilson and or Jameis Winston, or both, play over Jackson Dart in 2025. Now, we will discuss this with Bobby Skinner coming up, but the Giants' schedule in 2025 is absolutely brutal, and whether that quarterback is Russ, Jackson Dart, Jameis, whoever, I don't think this team is going to win that many games because of how brutal the schedule is, combined with the lack of weaponry the Giants have really outside of Malik Neighbors, and that's unfortunate because I think this team is going to prove to be a lot better than what their record at the end of the year will indicate. The 2025 Giants schedule is brutal all throughout, but it's particularly bad at the start of the season because they have back-to-back division road games as they go to Washington, then Dallas, and then come home to play the Chiefs and Chargers, and that's a tough draw for any team, let alone the Giants, who are quarterbacked by Russell Wilson, Jameis Winston, and a rookie Jackson Dart. And this is to say that I think Jackson Dart plays more than people probably think in his rookie season, and I would be surprised if he starts less than 4 games this year. I think there's going to be a point where the Giants are something along the lines of maybe 2-7 or 3-6, maybe 4-6, you get the point, and they kind of say to themselves that, hey, we are on the outside looking in, we're probably not going to make the playoffs, so let's start Jackson Dart and see what we have and ride with him no matter what. If he throws 3 or 4 interceptions, guess what, Jackson, we believe in you, keep doing your thing, keep throwing the pigskin, we are going to ride with you as far as we can, not just in 2025, but in 2026 too. And that's where I think Jackson's rookie impact will come in, is that he's probably going to start from anywhere from 5 to 7 games, and the biggest thing that I want to emphasize regarding that part is I do not think the Giants are a bad football team, and I ultimately think they will finish with a top 5 or 6 pick in the 2026 draft, but I think they are going to be substantially better than some of the other bottom feeders across the NFL this year. But when you look at this team's schedule, it is brutal for any team, let alone a team that is coming off of the number 3 overall pick. As simple as the idea is, I don't think this team is going to be able to score more points than the other team, and I think the defense is only going to be able to do so much. Now, I absolutely love their 3rd round selection, Darius Alexander, a defensive lineman from Toledo, and I think he will have decent rookie impact for where he was drafted. I don't think Darius is going to come in and really look like a solid second defensive tackle behind Dexter Lawrence, but I do think he will have a couple of sacks this year. I think we'll have anywhere from 15 to 20 pressures, and I think that he will have a good foundation to build on in 2026. I had him at player 51, they took him at 65. Anytime you get a plus 14 draft value in the early part of the 3rd round is a good process by the front office. And I will argue, even dating back to 2022, that a lot of the things Joe Schoen has done has been the right process. Unfortunately, the results haven't followed. Now, Cam Scatabo was another player that I thought the Giants had tremendous value on. I had him in the low 70s, and they drafted him at pick 105. And the only thing that I would say about Cam Scatabo pertaining to 2025 2025, is I wouldn't necessarily expect all that much impact for a day 3 rookie, specifically because they have Tyrone Tracy in front of him, who had a good rookie season. And I would argue if Cam Scatterbo has significant rookie impact in 2025, that it would require one of two things from Tyrone Tracy, and that would be a sophomore slump or an injury, which we of course hope does not happen. But I do like Cam Scatterbo quite a bit, especially for where they selected him, and think that he will be a fun running back to play behind Tyrone Tracy, and a guy that the Giants can absolutely use in short yardage situations. My biggest concern with the Giants outside of the quarterback play, of course, is the offensive line. Andrew Thomas is a really good player when healthy, but unfortunately he's only played in 16 total games over the last 2 years, and that has to be noted for the 2025 Giants. I hope I'm proven wrong and that this unit plays well and stays healthy throughout the 25 season, but I think this unit will hinder the offense in terms of what they can do, along with the quarterback play. And without further ado, let's now welcome on the man, the myth, the legend, the host of the Giants Nation podcast and YouTube channel, Bobby Skinner. All right, for the 2025 Giants team preview, we have a very special guest. It is host of the Giants Nation YouTube channel and podcast, Bobby Skinner. Bobby, how are we doing?
Good, man. Glad to be on. Enjoying this last month before we get the training camp to get things kicked off, but excited to be on.
Appreciate you joining. So with the 2025 Giants, I figured, we might as well just not beat around the bush, just dive straight in. Where do we stand on the quarterback situation? What do you think the breakdown of starts will be for the quarterbacks for the 2025 Giants?
Yeah, I've went back and forth on this of like how early will they go to Jackson Dart, because Jackson Dart is going to play this year unless the Giants are legitimate playoff contenders with Russell Wilson at quarterback. I just don't see happening with this team's roster, and they don't have the benefit of like an easier schedule where they can get some unexpected wins. Like they kind of have a gauntlet overall. I just don't see that. So I do think you'll see Jackson Dart, and honestly, it would simply be guessing to see when Jackson Dart's going to play, because we could all talk about the last 4 games of the year after the bye week, or you give him the last 5 games, you give him a game, bye week, and then the last month of the season is his. But Brian Daboll likes Jackson Dart more than anybody, right? He's the one who, bet his future on Jackson Dart. And they have given him, they'll throw a first team rep here or there. Like, they're really working on developing him. They're not just treating him like a backup quarterback. They are working on developing him. So, like, you just don't know, right? Like, you look back at the 2004 Giants and you would have said, if Kurt Warner was 5-4 as a starter, would the Giants bench him for Eli Manning? But that's exactly what they did, right? Where if you did that situation right now with Russell Wilson, you would say absolutely not. So I think it ends up somewhere in that 5 to 7 games, though, right? Because I think Russ is going to get 10, barring injury. Even if he got injured early, I think they would go to Jameis early over Jackson Dart. So I think it's somewhere in that 5 to 7 range, whether it's giving him those last 7 games or season over, let's get some looks at him.
That's actually going to set up for a question that we have later. That 5 to 7 range, good number to prepare for a question that we have later. Now, I just wanted to kind of go off of this. I would imagine Jackson would be up here on this, but which player, not just rookie, but which player are you most looking forward to watching this year for the 25 Giants?
Besides my favorite, Andrew Thomas, because anytime he's on the football field, it's like a joy for me to watch, just watching him just have the most consistent pass sets. I'm so excited for Abdul Carter, right? Like, how many times do you get to have a guy on your team that you had ranked number 1 in an entire NFL draft, right? Even, you get Malik Neighbors, whoever. Like, it just, Abdul Carter was number 1 for me in the entire draft. I didn't think it would happen early on because of Joe Shane's lack of desire to build depth with high priority picks. And so I thought that he would we have Brian Burns, Kayvon Thibodeau. I thought he might try and go elsewhere, but I fell in love with Abdul Carter. It's just so fun and easy to watch him, whether it's training camp, preseason games, regular season, I'm just excited to see him because I think he is going to make an impact as a rookie. And I think he's going to be better than Kayvon Thibodeau off the rep. I won't say he'll be better than Brian Burns off the rep, but I do think he'll be better than Kayvon Thibodeau. So Abdul Carter. Now, like you said, Jackson Dart is the cheat answer. Anytime you have a first-round rookie QB, you're excited to see him play. Probably more anxiety than exciting. Where Abdul Carter is just, I just want to go watch that guy rush.
I'm with you. I'm a Penn State fan, so I also had Abdul Carter as my number one player. I personally thought he was a little better than Travis Hunter. So I'm with you on the number one player in a class on your favorite team, because I've personally never had that. And I would imagine it's an exciting feeling to have that. Now to dive a little more into the 2025 Giants draft class. This was one of my favorite classes out of any of the teams. So where do you stand on third round defensive tackle Darius Alexander? We just also for transparency, Bobby, see there's a part of the video before the interview where we discuss, the rookie impact, and I'm really high on Darius Alexander specifically in this defense because of, getting to play next to Dexter, and then like you mentioned with the rest of the defensive line and how this team's going to be able to get after the quarterback.
Yeah, and he's at the most wide open spot on the Giants. Year 4 regime, you kind of have there really isn't any true position battles on this team, except for that second defensive tackle spot, which again, they signed Roy Robertson-Harris, who I'm not a big fan of, for a 1-year deal. Jeremiah Ledbetter, they have Raheem Nunez-Roches, and then obviously they invested in Darius Alexander. I go back and forth to Alexander. I was at the Senior Bowl, and every year you have your first watch guys where you get back from the Senior Bowl Sunday. You're like, all right, who are the guys that caught my eye that I didn't know anything about? I'm going to watch their film. Darius Alexander was number one for me leaving there because of how well he did. But he is a 25-year-old rookie who hasn't had a lot of production against a lot of smaller competition. So there's really I think it'll be the Giants' best pass rushing defensive tackle outside of Dexter Lawrence right away. It'll be interesting to see how he holds up in run defense wise, because that was in areas where I thought he struggled a little bit when he played Illinois in the previous season. And that was the only bigger competition I got, which again, that's not even the top competition, even though they had an NFL offensive lineman and Isaiah Adams at guard there. Or I think tackle at the time. So we did a show in Charlotte where we talked about him first. I think he's a big swing for this team, because if he can be good right away, that's a huge hole filled. But I think he may have some rookie struggles against the run. It's just, can he be a middle of the road pass rusher for that defensive tackle spot right away?
So going off of that, obviously Dexter's not a concern, but do you worry at all with the 2025 Giants rush defense, given that Abdul's, a little lighter? He's going to, have to transition to the NFL playing strength. Obviously, we have zero concerns with him rushing the passer, but do you have any concerns with teams, outside zone being able to, kind of wall off Dexter in the run game as much as you can, and then trying to get to that second level with, teams just being able to consistently run the football against New York this year?
Absolutely. Because of the way Shane Bowen likes to run his defense, he likes to operate from mostly light boxes. That evened out a little bit as the year went along. But they didn't make any pure upgrades to their run defense. Abdul Carter is going to be disruptive, but we also worry about him holding up on the edge. Right? You put two helmets on him, and you're going to be able to open up some gaps. And they put a lot of weight in their secondary for their run defense. And, their two outside corners, Paulson Adebo and Deontay Banks, have not been good in run defense. Are they implementing those guys to be better in that? Andrew Phillips is a good run defender in the nickel spot. And then Holland and Newman at safety. I don't think Holland over Jason Pinnock is making the biggest difference in the world in your run defense. So it's just schematically, will they make efforts to keep their linebackers more clean where they didn't do that last year under Shane Bowen? So that is my biggest worry about this Giants team or Giants defense, because you get them my goal for this defense, just get them the third down, and they can wreak havoc. But I think a lot of teams will realize that's how the Giants play and do a good job on first and second down carrying the ball.
So you mentioned this is the biggest worry about the Giants defense. If you had to, rank the biggest concerns with the Giants, I guess where would, with the interior offensive line, how would that stack up with the quarterback play, the IOL, and then the run defense?
I won't even say it's just the interior offensive line, because they're not good run defenders, but there are three smart players in Runyon, JMS, and Greg Van Roten. And a lot of times in the interior, it's just about being in the right place at the right time, because you're getting two hats on guys most of the time. And that was a huge upgrade for the Giants. The issue is that when Andrew Thomas is not on the field, that's when the offensive line, you're putting someone that's probably a bad player at right tackle, you're moving Jermaine Illuminor over. That's when things can become a mess for the Giants. I think this is an underrated worry for the Giants, is Russell Wilson's an upgrade at the quarterback spot, no doubt. Where is he in everyone's quarterback power rankings, right? Like, it's a kind of like, when I talk about because every team talks about how their team had upgrades. It's like, okay, upgrades to what? Upgrades to what relative to the other, 31 teams in the NFL? I think that's one. But I do think, yeah, I think that's it. Is how good is this passing game going to be? Because it can be really good, with Russell and those three wide receivers and Neighbors, Slayton, and Robinson. But it's just that whole passing game coming together on a consistent basis. I don't know if the ingredients are there for that.
So going off of that, just with the offense and everything, I did preface this that I think the Giants are one of the most improved teams, and you even said relative to where you were last year. But is there a part of you heading into the year that you worry because of this schedule with starting at Washington, at Dallas, and then Kansas City, and then the Chargers, where we might be looking at a 4 or 5 win season strictly because of how difficult the schedule is? And then, kind of as simple as this idea is, not being able to outscore the teams that you're facing.
Yeah, I think that's a legitimate, I think the schedule is real deal, and it is a conversation with the Giants, where, I think everyone talks about their schedule, but I think the Giants have the fifth, the hardest ranked schedule preseason of the last 5 years or something like that. So I think it is a legit conversation, and then the rebuttal to that is always, well, that never stays the same. That's true, but even the teams that are bad on record wise are teams that might be a lot better. The Chicago Bears might be a lot better. The San Francisco 49ers might be a lot better, right? Those are two last place teams that they're playing that might be a lot better. They're facing the whole NFC North, AFC West, and then they have the Eagles, Cowboys, and Commanders in their division. Where when they made the playoffs in 2022, the first 4 games of the year, you had 3 bad teams in the Titans, Panthers, and Chicago Bears, right? And then you could play the Texans, who were, the worst team in the NFL that year. The Colts, who had, bottomed out that year. So there was, the Commanders, were having Sam Howell at quarterback, I think, at that time. So, they did play some bad teams, and I think that matters. Now, I think year 4 regime, the standard should be to win games no matter what your schedule is. But I do think that schedule comes into the play. It's they can improve, but at the end of the day, improving from a 3-win team may lead to you just being a 4 or 5-win team, like you mentioned.
So this is honestly one of my biggest concerns with when you think about a team's long-term vision. It's okay to sit and think about what is going to happen this year, and then, okay, what's the butterfly effect? Is there concerns that, hey, they're going to win 5, even 6 games this year, and then you're looking at the reality where, we have 15 wins over the last 3 years, and we just took a quarterback in the first round? Is that where do you stand as a Giants fan on that?
That's one of the reasons I was a big proponent of getting rid of Joe Shane and Brian Daboll last offseason, because you knew that they were not going to come out of this year without a quarterback. Now it looked like it might have been Matthew Stafford at one point, which would have made it a little bit easier. But once that folded, then they moved on to trading up in the first round because they didn't view any of these quarterbacks worthy of that pick number 3. And again, I was a big proponent of moving on from these two, specifically Joe Shane. I don't think he's built a good roster in his 4th year. But I also know Giants ownership and John Marin, how they think and work, unfortunately. And I don't want to be in a situation where they're bad this year and they win 4 or 5 games and they deserve to be fired, right? You don't build a winning team in 4 years, you deserve to be fired. But then John Mara will hire, not on purpose, but just the people who play into what he wants to hear. We can work with this Jackson Dart guy, right? So I'm rooting for the Giants to win, one, as a Giants fan, but just to do enough to get these guys a year 5. That way, next year, it's the easiest of easy evaluations. It is either all these guys stay or all these guys go. Speaking GM, head coach, quarterback. It becomes a very easy decision after 2026 compared to this year where, I wasn't big on Jackson Dart. I did not want to trade up in the first round and draft him. But I also, first-round quarterbacks shouldn't be afforded 1 year, especially guys that have, like that. Jackson Dart should be able to be bad this year and get a second year. I'm not of the notion of just draft a quarterback 2 years in a row. Now, if they brought in a new regime, I'd be very much more open to that. But like a quarterback that's a huge investment. You should give that guy a second year. There's too many examples of guys figuring it out from year 1 to year 2. Doesn't mean that he's going to be good. Most of the times those guys end up being bad, but I want him to be afforded, if someone who is not a proponent of trading up for him, I want him to be afforded a second year of development.
No, it's very fair. And I completely understand. Now, to go back to the interior offensive line, just that we discussed earlier, do you worry about JMS in year 3, struggled a little bit in the first couple of years? Do you think he finally puts it together this year? And I know Andrew Thomas has also only played 16 total games over the last 2 years. That's obviously going to factor in with everybody. But do you think this is the year that JMS puts it together? Because I really liked him coming out of Minnesota a couple years ago.
Yes, as did I. I think I don't think he's ever going to be this like top 5 center, but can he become, an above average to average center? I think right now he's probably a little below average. And because he can be someone that you resign on a cheap deal, like, and plays a lot of games, but still doesn't live up to that second round pick that he was. So I think it is, it is the decision year for JMS, because if he's bad this year, you really can't go into year 4 being like, all right, well, this is the starter again. Like, you have to look for an upgrade elsewhere. So yeah, I think it's a pivotal year for him. And it's going to be interesting to see how the Giants deploy their run game, because I think Brian Daboll has historically not really put together an identity as a rushing offense. Work around these guys' strengths and weaknesses, but if JMS can develop some strengths, that would be a huge advantage for them.
So sticking with the 23 draft class, I guess, where do you stand on Deonte Banks heading into year 3, pivotal year? There was definitely some ups and downs last year for him. The Philly game was one of them, but where do you stand on Deonte Banks and then the rest of the corner room heading into 25?
Yeah, Banks is extremely talented. I think he can stick with most guys. The issue is he doesn't have any ball skills, and I don't think that's going to be developed. So I don't think he's going to be this corner 1 that they hoped him to be. But if you can cover guys well, if you can cover wide receiver 2s well, they're not going to get the same targets that a number 1 wide receiver would get, right? Because there was a lot of times where Banks was in good position. He just doesn't have ball skills, and he's not going to develop those. It's just not going to happen. But if you can cover wide receiver 2s really well, they're not going to get those same opportunities that Amari Cooper got when they played the Browns, or whatever, Garrett Wilson, or whatever number 1 wide receiver they faced. So that'll be interesting to see what Banks is. Can he be an advantage as that second corner? I'm not looking just to be playable, but to be an advantage as that second corner, which I think he's the one player in that class I do have hope for us to be an advantage. JMS, I don't really think that's going to happen. Jalen Hyatt, I'm extremely confident that's not going to happen. But Banks is the guy who's talented. He's not far off, but he still, hasn't proven it at the NFL level.
So, by the way, Jalen Hyatt bulked up to 194. He put on some weight. I don't know if you saw that recently, but he's at least something to. If I were a Giants fan, I'd at least be talking about it. I wouldn't.
We are talking about it. I think we're talking about it a little too much as Giants fans, but yes, we are talking about it.
Well, I wouldn't have too much confidence in it, but at least it'd be like, hey, there's something there, is what I would be telling myself. But for every team preview that we do heading into each year, there is a breakout player, or I do a breakout player. So my breakout player for the 25 Giants is going to be second round pick from last year, safety Tyler Nubin. Curious if you have a breakout player, who that guy would be for this team.
I think that's a good choice, because we did a mailbag question early in the offseason. It's like, who is going to be the second best player from that class? With Malik Neighbors being the obvious one. And I was like, I still think it's Tyler Nubin, right? Like, I know he was the highest picked out of there, but I think he has the most ability there, where Drew Phillips is a good run defender, but I think he's a little limited coverage. Theo Johnson, though, the 4th round pick from that class, yeah. I feel like I have, if you ask me to project what each individual player on the team is going to do this year, 52 out of the 53, I think I can nail it down pretty well, with giving the rookies a little bit of leeway. Theo Johnson is the one where I can't nail it down, because I liked him a lot. He was my tight end 2 in the class. Obviously, a big gap between him and Brock Bowers and a weaker tight end class. But he was my tight end 2, and by a pretty decent margin over whoever was number 3, whether I can't remember if it was Jatavion Sanders or somebody else. And he is big, fast. He's got inline blocking skills. I think he's got a little more nuance in his route running than people gave him credit for. that could be a guy who's a real weapon in the NFL. You know, we see tight ends sometimes do that aren't drafted high. And Theo Johnson's the 4th rounder. And I know you're a Penn State guy, so you're familiar with Theo. I think he can be a real weapon, but I can also see a year where you're just very disappointed in what he is, where he's has 350 yards. He's just a decent blocker, not a good one. Where I think he's got all the potential in the world to be a legit player. And I'm excited to see it with Theo.
I hope you're right. I will say Theo, to me, I mean, every year Penn State's like their weight room is unbelievable. And every year it's, we'll have a 240-pound guy run a 4.39 or just something insane. So I was always under the belief with Theo that I thought his numbers were a lot better than how he actually plays. I don't think he tested to where his numbers were, at least, from a playing standpoint or from a game speed standpoint. But I hope you're right. I really hope that he can be that field stretching tight end and more than live up to where he was selected. I do think that was borderline draft steal for where he was selected on day 3 of the 24 draft. But now we have a little rapid fire if you're ready for that. And this goes back to the Jackson Dart game started. I have the over under at 5.5.
I'm going to go under. I'm going to say 5 exactly. I think 5 exactly is the sweet spot.
Okay. Now, over under Malik Neighbors receiving yards, 1,300 on the dot.
Over. I mean, they're going to feed him. If they're good or bad, he's going to get his numbers. So I'm going to go over.
Okay. Now, not over or not. We're taking a quick break. How was the Colts game? Just watching Neighbors last year. Just your guy. Like just talk about that. Just talk about how fun that was for Neighbors.
Well, I will say that wasn't the most fun outing for Malik Neighbors because I hate talking about tanking. I hate it. I hate it. I hate that the Giants put me in that situation. But I've been in it so many years in a row that finally I was like, you know what? Screw it, tank. And then they won that game. So the thing is, I already knew Malik Neighbors was great before that game. But yeah, it's just you go back and watch that game. It's like this is what we could do if we gave him a little more space and weren't forced to force feed him compared to some of the other guys on the roster. So yeah, I think he's going to be. I think he's going to be up for a big season. I think he's already viewed as one of the better receivers in the NFL, but I think this year will really solidify it.
I couldn't agree more. Now, over under Tyrone Tracy will say 900 rushing yards because there's a little bit of running back room.
I'll say under. One, they drafted Cam Scatterboo for a reason. He's not totally disregarded. Devin Singletary is still on the roster, even though I think he'll be the 3rd guy clearly. And I think I don't think this Giants offense. I don't think Brian Dable really builds an identity as a run game. He's the kind of guy who will go a game where it's like we only ran the ball 7 times in it. So I'm going to go under with that.
All right. And then the last over under is Dexter Lawrence, Brian Burns, Abdul Carter, over under combined. We'll set the line at 32.5 sacks.
32.5. I'll say under. That's a big, you have Kayvon Thibodeau included in there. It's just Dexter Lawrence, despite the fact that he had 9.5 in like 10 games last year, despite his dominance, has not been someone who's produced a ton of sacks. Brian Burns has only done it double digits once in his entire career. And then Abdul Carter's a rookie. So I think that's a really hard number to get. So I'll say under. I think there'll be like a top 5 sack team total, but I'll go under.
All right. And then the last question is, will Jackson Dart be the best quarterback to ever play for Ole Miss and the Giants?
No. Yeah. Under. I hope over. Like, right. I would love to fall in love with him the same way I did with Eli as a kid. I don't think anything ever matched your childhood quarterback, and he just happened to win 2 Super Bowls. So he really can't do anything to make me like him more than Eli, and I guess win 3 Super Bowls. But I'm going to go under on that.
I figured that, but yeah. I do appreciate you joining, Bobby. So go ahead.
Let me finish. Sorry to ruin your closing, but it is very funny. The Giants have drafted 2 quarterbacks, not even just 1st-round quarterbacks, just 2 quarterbacks since Eli. I guess DJ was drafting when Eli's there, but one is like, all right, this guy had his coach and David Cutcliffe, and this guy went to his alma mater and Jackson Dart. So if you want to get drafted by the Giants, you need some type of connection to Eli Manning. So Arch and a couple
I was going to say, yeah. If Jackson Dart flames out, then Eli's nephew, bloodline.
Yeah. So if we're calling cuts on this Jackson Dart stuff in 2 years, like maybe we joked about it, when he was in like 8th grade and stuff, and we may be facing that reality pretty soon.
Well, I mean, and then even after that, in like 20 years, and Eli could have a son.
Yeah, so I'll go straight from Arch to Charlie.
So, all right, I appreciate you joining, Bobby. Please plug any and everything you're working on. Let the people know where they can find you.
Yeah, Giants Nation show. I mean, basically wherever you look that up, that it should show up. It's a little bit of the slower period of the offseason, but here's something the national fan base might like is next Monday or whenever this, I don't know, but Monday, July 6th, I think it is, did an interview talking about Jackson Dart specifically with Nate Tice, Trevor Sikkema, Big Game Bengal, and then No Flags Film. So you get a little bit of national point of view, and we talk about some other things like Jaden Daniels' development and next year's draft class. So that's something you could look forward to if you're not looking for just Giants talk.
That's awesome. I can say I'll personally be I'll be listening when it drops, so can't wait. And appreciate you joining again, Bobby.
Thanks, man.
I hope you enjoyed, and if you did, please like the video and subscribe to the channel as it helps tremendously with the YouTube algorithm, and I cannot thank you guys enough for the support. A big thank you to Bobby Skinner of the Giants Nation YouTube channel and podcast for joining, and until next time, please be safe and have a great day. Love you guys.